time. Are all of you good? Did you guys do anything while I was gone? It was like 30 seconds. I don't think... I hope you guys didn't do anything weird. We back. Alright. We back. So, first thing up... Yeah, oh, okay. Account update failed. Why is it? I don't know. You got lost a game of Direct Strike? F. F in chat. F in the chat. Alright. First thing we're learning. First topic. We're going to talk about... Say it with me, everybody. Knots. No, see, like the mathematical knots, not like the... Not like the other type of knots. I don't know what you guys would be implying. Like, knots are cool, like, you know. You could, like, take them. You could, like, give them to people as, like, a gift. There's all sorts of knots. Talk about the math ones, you nerds. Don't be weird. Don't be weird. Out of context, X possibilities over now 9,000. Oh, no, totally.
From a mathematician's perspective, let's begin.
I just realized I muted that in the beginning. Hold on, we're gonna watch that again. We're gonna watch a shoe tie itself.
Welcome to the exhibit of geometry and knots. Knots are so much a part of our everyday world that we take them for granted. But mathematicians have found that studying even the simplest knots can lead into almost unimaginable spaces. In this movie, we'll take you on a short guided tour of the world of knots from a mathematician's perspective. Let's begin. This figure 8 knot can be untied since its ends are free. From a mathematician's point of view, this knot is no knot at all. But if we join the ends to form a loop, we can no longer undo the knot without cutting it. Now that's a knot. These 3 knots look different, are they?
Oh, I'm not gonna last this video, guys. I'm not gonna last.
Knots that look different may be just different arrangements of the same knot. Sometimes a knot that looks knotted really isn't. Here are 3 intertwined loops. If you remove any one of them, the other 2 fall apart.
Oh no.
Mathematicians call the union of several loops a link. By rearranging this link, we can see that the 3 loops are equivalent.
Whoa.
Here is another symmetric form of the same link. In this form, it's called the Borromean rings.
Hey, those look cool.
When we look at a knot, we don't usually think about the space
And I think those were on the Olympics,
but
right?
to a mathematician, the space around a knot is just as real as the knot itself. Sometimes it's easier to understand something by looking at what it's not.
Oh no. She used a pun? Man, imagine how out of context every single one of these screenshots and clips are gonna be. I'm honestly surprised that I just show this and not have people, like, not, huh. Cats!
The complement of a set is what's left when you take away the points of a set.
No, cats!
So what's not a knot is
Oh,
called its
no.
complement. In 1988, Cameron Gordon and John Lukey proved that the complements of different knots can never be the same space.
Huh.
So studying the complements of knots helps us tell whether knots are the same or different. What is left when you take away the points of a knot or link from three-dimensional space?
Okay.
What's left when you can't see the knot? Not just because there's no matter there, but because space itself doesn't extend to where the knot used to be.
Okay.
We'll look first at a simpler picture. What is life like in a space with a single line missing? Or in a plane with a single point removed? We'll remove the point by pulling it upward, stretching the plane into a cone which grows sharper and sharper. Finally, the point disappears off to infinity, and the cone becomes a cylinder.
Okay. Goodbye.
The point at the cone's tip is special. It's called a cone point.
Okay.
As the cone steepens, the radius of a circle about the cone point increases, though its circumference stays constant.
What is this, brain string theory?
Meanwhile,
Oh,
an
yeah.
outsider looking from above sees the picture unchanged. We introduce an observer who lives inside the cone's surface and a few objects for him to observe.
Okay.
To the insider, light rays travel in straight lines. But the outsider sees those lines as curving around the
topology?
cone
Yeah,
point.
topology is fun. It's math
To
without the
understand
math.
The insider's view, cut a cone made of paper and unroll it onto a plane.
Stop.
Since unrolling does not distort the paper, lines which are straight for the
Help.
insider will be straight lines on the plane.
Oh, no.
This wedge is a building block for the cone and is called a fundamental domain. The two edges resulting from the cut represent a single line back on the cone. Anything crossing one edge reappears at the other.
Oh, what the fuck? Yo, wait, whoa. Oh, that's weird.
Mend the cut by stretching, then gluing the edges.
Okay.
We get the outsider's view, where light rays look curved. The position of the imaginary cut is arbitrary. These insiders, touring the cone in their car, don't notice
All
as we
the
move
squares
the cut to
make a
follow
circle.
them.
Does anyone think that
They look
flat
right
earthers could
through
use
the
this
cut
logic to, like,
and see what seems to be another copy of the wedge.
do something? I don't know what this would
Special
prove, though.
values of the cone angle. A whole number of wedges fit together neatly, but usually the remaining gap is filled with part of a wedge.
What's going on? Okay.
Here's another way a cone surface differs from a plane. In a plane, only one straight line connects
There's a
two
documentary where
points.
flat Earth would try to
But on
prove
a
the Earth was
cone,
flat.
There
I
may
feel
be
like that's every
several.
single flat Earth documentary. It doesn't give you a lot of
There
faith.
may
Well,
even
yeah.
be straight paths from a point to itself. We make our two-dimensional objects three-dimensional by stacking them up. The stack of cone points forms a line called a
Right.
cone axis. The
Okay.
fundamental domain for this space is a solid wedge. Our inside observer sees many copies of the car at once. Which is the real one? They are all equally real. But the light rays from the car reach the observer from several different directions. Remember our question, what is life like in a space with a single line missing, or in a plane with a single point removed? As the cone angle decreases, the space we are looking at changes. Sometimes the wedge-shaped fundamental domains click together perfectly, like a jigsaw, and we get a symmetric picture. When n
This feels like
fundamental
something I'd seen in a
domains
museum in the
fit
90s.
exactly around the cone
I feel like this was made in the
we
90s.
say the axis has order n symmetry. As the order increases, the missing line recedes into the distance.
Whoosh.
In the limit, the missing line disappears off to infinity.
Huh. Okay.
The inside observer sees an endless straight row of cars, which are all a single car seen by light traveling different paths. Our building block or fundamental domain has become an infinite slab, and the cone is now a cylinder.
New interesting phrase for today. Infinite
See how
slab.
life would look in a space with a single line removed. Let's now turn to the question, what is life like in a space from which
You
the
mentioned
Baromean
1988
rings have
as
been
an earlier
removed?
time. Ooh, true.
We place 6 cone axes with order 2 symmetry on the
Okay.
faces of a cube.
Okay.
This cube will be a fundamental domain for our experiment. Let's try and see what this space is from the outside. Remember that the walls of a fundamental domain determined by an axis of symmetry should be thought of as being glued together.
Okay.
We
So,
first glue the walls containing red
yeah, they're
axes,
glued.
and then efface them as they are no longer necessary.
So what is this video actually about? It's
Notice
about
how the blue
knots.
axes are joined
Like
together
topology
into an
knots,
ellipse.
knots.
We now
I've
glue the walls
lost
containing
the
green
case as
axes.
to what the hell is
This
going
joins
on.
the red axes into an ellipse.
I'm just kind of letting this flow and seeing
We
what
have folded
happens.
along 4 of the 6 faces of the original cube to form an ellipsoid.
We are...
All that remains is to fold along the blue axis, which has also become an ellipse. To do this, we make the front and back hemisphere of the ellipsoid bulge up. The green axes too have joined to form a green
The
ellipse.
topology is nodded. Am I right,
Notice
gamers?
what we have now, the Borromean rings. Now we've seen that the outside view of our fundamental domain is the Borromean rings. What is the insider's view like? Remember, around each cone axis, the insider sees 2 copies of every object.
We're nearly in Relay's territory. I know.
First, activate the red axes.
Okay.
The image from our fundamental domain gets replicated in the next door cube by the front axis. And both of these images get replicated by the back axis. And so on, until we have copies of the cube extending all the way to infinity in both directions.
Okay.
Next, turn on the green axes which face forward. This creates another infinite row of cubes. Turning on the other green axes reproduces these 2 rows to give 4 rows, and so on, until we have an infinite horizontal plane of cubes.
I understand this so far.
Finally, when the blue axes are turned on, they make the 2-dimensional pattern be repeated in layers to fill up the whole space. This is what it looks like to live inside the space created by the order 2 axes on the sides of the cube.
We're literally talking about parallel universes at this point. Holy shit.
And the Borromean axes have higher order symmetry. For instance, if we want them to be order 4 axes, we must build a fundamental domain with 90-degree angles.
Me in the mirror
along
hallway
these
doing
axes.
flips. Yeah,
We must modify our cube so it has right angles along its 6 axes. Impossible, you say? You may not have noticed it, but we're escorting you into Lobachevskian, or hyperbolic, geometry, where this
Oh
and
god.
many other things.
No, 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 no.
This dodecahedron, in true hyperbolic,
Who sent us this video?
has 90-degree
Lunar?
angles between every pair of adjacent faces.
Luna, I'm gonna kill you. How are we?
Look directly down on the red.
We're talking about hyperbolic space. We're 10 minutes in.
We see that the faces meeting.
The stream has only started.
We can glue 3 more copies.
I
of
don't
the
even go this
dodecahedron
far.
on this axis.
And I go pretty far.
We can move our
Oh my-
viewpoint
Oh
inside
god.
this figure. Now we have 4-fold symmetry around one axis.
Oh no.
Before exploring further,
In this,
we'll
the video the
remove
time
wall
cube guy
and
watched
change
before
the
he
shape and
snapped.
color of the beams.
It wasn't me this
We
time.
can continue
Yeah, it wasn't you this time. I know it was Lunar.
around each colored axis. First,
Hyper-caffeinated
let's do this
space,
for some of
yeah.
the available green, blue, and red axes.
Here's the lame thing. I understand.
Eventually,
Yeah, no, hold on.
copies of the dodecahedron.
I understand 4-dimensional space. Like, I understand how it works. I just don't... I hate it when it just gets described as this wild... like this wild cube in a cube thing. We have a video about stuff being in the 4th dimension. Hold on. I will show it after,
Just
because
as
it
we
will make
tiled
sense.
Ordinary space with cubes.
God.
We tiled hyperbolic space.
Maybe there should have been a
with
trypophobia
regular
warning. Oh my
dodecahedrons.
god. Basically, a kaleidoscope. Nah, not just a kaleidoscope. A kaleidoscope is...
Notice how quickly apparent size changes as we move.
Oh, sweet Jesus, no.
This is one of the biggest qualitative differences between our everyday
This shouldn't really
space
trip that.
and hyperbolic space.
I feel like it might.
This is what it looks like to live inside the space created by order 4 axes along the edges of the dodecahedron.
Remember when this was talking about knots?
By adjusting the angles at the colored axes, we can derive similar pictures for order 5 symmetry, order 6 symmetry, and so on for all higher orders.
Make it stop.
Notice that as the order of the symmetry increases, the colored axes of the dodecahedron grow very short and move far away. Finally,
Oh no.
in the limit, the red, green, and blue axes
Can I order
have
some
receded
number
to
5 symmetry?
infinity.
Yeah.
The resulting
Oh,
figure
no.
is called a rhombic dodecahedron. The
Okay.
6 colored axes have been transformed into 6 vertices at infinity. To
Okay.
better understand the geometry of this shape, we add transparent walls to one copy of the figure and rotate hyperbolic space around its center. As the vertices at infinity pass behind our eye, we see interesting patterns.
Oh lord, okay.
From inside the rhombic dodecahedron, the link has become infinitely far away, so that light can never reach it. This is the picture
I'm
of
sure
the
this makes
complement
sense
of
to
the
somebody.
Baronian rings. We have succeeded in bending light so that it continues forever without hitting the link.
Bending
This
reality to
geometry
our will.
is called a hyperbolic structure for the link complement. According to theorems of Mostow, Martin, and Prasad,
This makes sense, but it also hurts my eyes. This does make sense, but it also hurts my eyes.
according to a theorem of Bill Thurston,
I feel like I'm learning.
all knots and links, with some
Do you feel
simple
like you're learning?
exceptions, have complements that admit hyperbolic
I feel like I'm
structures.
learning.
Therefore, knots and links are completely determined by pictures such as this one. This concludes our guided tour.
Can we leave?
We've had a glimpse of how mathematicians understand knots and links and the spaces around them.
Okay. What do you mean we're done? There is no exit plan. There's no exit plane, more like. Thank you, Lunar. This music is shank sounding. I love it. Like, there's a video about, like, talking about hyperbolic space and other stuff, and I'm like, hold on, what was it? See, like, here's how, this is how I understand 4 dimensions, is because of this stupid little toy. I'm sure you guys have seen this, maybe? If not, then
4D Toys is a toy box filled with 4-dimensional toys. By 4-dimensional, I mean that they exist in a world with 4 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time, instead of 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time. It turns out that the rules of how objects bounce, slide, and roll around can be generalized to higher dimensions, and this unique toy lets you experience what that would look like. So I thought I would show it to you, and in the process explain what the 4th dimension is. So here's a stack of 4D hypercubes. To us, a 4D hypercube kind
there
of
it
looks
goes.
like a regular 3D cube sometimes, because even though these toys are 4D, our universe is only 3D, so we can only see 3 dimensions out of 4.
Oh.
I'll explain soon, but first I'm going to grab this
Hey, they
hypercube and
stacked.
throw it. I
Oh.
knocked down that pile, and
Elias,
some of the cubes even
hello!
got knocked into the 4th dimension, so I
Hello.
can't see them anymore. Here's a ball pit filled with 200 hyperspheres. I can move along the 4th dimension and see all the hyperspheres I couldn't see before.
we're learning
Let's
about
see. I can grab this
the
4D
fourth
shape
dimension.
called the 120 cell and I can roll it around. It's gone into the 4th dimension, so
there
I'll
it
move
goes.
along the 4th dimension to find it. I can also look at different 3D cross sections of it. So it's fun to simply play around with these, but we can try to understand what's going on a little bit more by looking at a version in one less dimension. So let's do that before I show some more stuff. So say that you are a 2D character and you can only see 2 dimensions, up, down, and left, right.
Hell yeah!
But
We're
what
in
if the world was
Flatlands.
actually 3D and you were just a flat 2D character stuck on a 2D plane. This is what the world actually looks like, and these 2D shapes were actually 2D cross-sections of 3D shapes. I can move this sphere back and forth in the 3rd dimension
box
and
200
see how its
hyperspheres.
intersection
Cool,
with
thanks.
the 2D plane gets smaller or larger.
This is what Mr.
But a
Game and
2D
Watch.
character can only see 2 dimensions out of 3, so let's go back to their perspective.
This
from
is what
inside
Mr.
the
Game and
2D
Watch
plane.
sees in
We
Smash.
do keep the
Yeah.
3D view in the bottom left corner though. So these 2D shapes don't behave like a 2D character would expect 2D objects to behave. For example, this red circle seems to mysteriously float in midair, but we know it's actually just the cross-section of the red sphere. The slice does not go through the center of the sphere, which is why the circle looks like it's floating. If the red sphere hits another sphere, it may
there it
bounce into the
goes.
third dimension and disappear
goodbye.
from our slice.
Oh, goodbye.
After bouncing, the square shape seems to mysteriously change how many sides it has and gets smaller and disappears. We know that's actually because it's a cube and it moved into the third
Imagine how
dimension.
horrifying it must
Still
be
hard
to be this
predict
guy over
exactly
here
how
to see
shape
this shit.
changes, though. And now let's move the 2D plane we're standing on along the third dimension. The circles shrink and grow, and the squares morph because we're changing which slice we're taking.
Wildly
Might look weird
horrifying.
to a 2D character, but for us 3D beings,
Only if
it
he
makes
isn't used
sense.
to it.
It's
I
kinda
mean,
like
yeah.
an MRI. Each 2D circle we see is only part of a 3D sphere.
Kind of horrifying still. Yeah, he has hard enough
Okay, now back
life
to
as it
40
being flat.
toys. In
Right.
40 toys, instead of a 2D being living in a 3D world, we are a 3D being living in a 4D world. So we can only see 3 dimensions out of 4 instead of 2 out of 3. And instead of seeing a 2D cross-section of a 3D world, we see a 3D cross-section of a 4D world. But otherwise, many of the same things
there it goes.
happen, just in one higher dimension. These 3D shapes don't behave like a 3D being would expect 3D objects to behave. The sphere floating in midair is actually just a 3D cross-section of a 4D hypersphere. The slice does not go through the center of the hypersphere though, which is why the sphere looks like it's floating. If the red sphere hits
Your
another
time with your
sphere,
utter
it may
guide
bounce
of
into
these
the fourth
photos
dimension
touch
and
your
disappear
attention.
from our slice.
Rose, did you say the word time cube?
After bouncing, the cube shape seems to
Rose, you said
mysteriously
time
change how many faces it has and gets smaller and disappears.
Time
That's because it's actually a
cube.
4D hypercube and it moved into the fourth dimension. It's still hard to predict exactly how the shape changes though, even harder than in 2D. If I move the 3D plane along the fourth dimension, the spheres grow and shrink, and the cube changes shape. But what is happening is only that we are taking 3D cross-sections of the actual 4D objects. Each 3D sphere we see is only a part of a 4D hypersphere. However, unlike last time when we could pull out the camera and see the entire 3D world, here we can't see the entire 4D world, because our universe is only 3-dimensional. Okay, let me show you some more stuff.
Yeet.
These two rings can be unbound not
this
by
is
breaking
cool.
them, but only using the fourth dimension.
What?
This is a 4D shape with 24 faces that you can use as a fair die. There are others with 5, 8, 16, 120, and 600 faces.
I didn't. A 4-dimensional fair dice is actually kind of a cool idea.
Here's the 4-dimensional version of a familiar kid's toy.
Oh, look at it go. Then we need a 5th dimension to contain the speed of light. Make it stop. Too many. Higher dimensional thinking
You can
sucks.
try fitting this hypercube into this hyperhole. You're basically a kid playing with toy blocks again. They're just
4th
4D
dimensional Dorito. I feel like a 4th dimensional Dorito needs a different name. Because we have Dorito, and then if we remove the Edo part, we have Dorit. And then whatever the hell Dorit is. And then
What do you make of this? 5.
Yeah, then we have a well, yeah, actually no. So okay, so the 4, so it's with what you guys are saying is true. That means we have there's such a thing as an Unrito, and yeah, an Unrito, and Unri, Dorito, Dorit, Tetrito, Tetrit, Quadrito, Quadrit? Right? A 4th dimensional Dorito would be a pyramid with a slight bend in the fourth. Well, no, because the thing is that there's 3-dimensional Doritos already, and those exist. Like Doritos 3D existed. So they've already made these. They've already made Tetritos. So we need the Tetrit and then the Quadrit and then the Quadrito. But we can't perceive the Quadrito until high R&D does something. A Dorito is a curved plane, you're right. I just realized that makes Doritos non-Euclidean snacks. What other non-Euclidean snacks are there? We got Pringles, which are very clearly saddles. Oreos are plainer, so I wouldn't count those. Yeah, so a Dorito is a 4D curve. 4D curved volume just kind of sounds like the room where the flavor blaster is. It's the actual flavor blaster room where they blast the Doritos with flavor. I think that's what we're getting at. What in the world am I saying? I do like the concept of an unit and an unrito and then a duo. I mean, and then a Dorit and a Dorito. Those are very good concepts. I don't know what they would be. I don't know what they would represent, though. Time to stand into the focal point of the curved flavor blaster. No, actually, no. You know what it would be? It would be like, you know those, like, shoot. Like those Echo, like, curved... Echo... What the hell? Curved Echo statue? Like, they have statues where, like, if you... This is not helping me at all. There's, like, statues where, like, or art displays where, like, if you stand a certain point in it, it has, like, curved audio, like, around you. And you stand in the focal point and it, like, echoes back, right? Yeah. Like, imagine that, but it's like a Dorito. Or it's like the Dorito, like the flavor blasting chamber for Doritos. Could you imagine? I don't know what the hell I'm talking about anymore. We've gone past several dimensions where my brain is. Anyway, okay, we're moving on. Bookend with the Dorito in the shape of knot. Oh my god. Hold on. Speaking of, let's find out. Yes, we get a good video. Hold on. Let's learn properly with our friend Cliff Stoll.
Okay.
Hold on. We got this. This is going to be better now.
So
Now, best man, and also we'll finally learn and understand what that 17-minute video was about in 8 minutes.
So about
I love
30 or
him.
40, maybe 50 years ago.
I bought-
my
I bought-
father,
I-
who's
yeah.
a bartender, brought for me a saloon.
I'm
sign.
sitting. The
Beer
Klein bottle's sitting next to me. It's great.
A neon beer sign for
I have the
Valentine
documents.
Ale and beer. I mean, it's a neon sign. Been in my attic for decades.
He just has
you
a
know,
neon.
There's something cool about the Valentine logo. It used to say purity, body, and flavor. I hauled this out of the attic, got a neon sign transformer up, and figure, hey, I gotta light this up. Throw a switch,
Oh,
and hot
Instant
damn,
flavor.
Valentine Ale and beer. The beautiful thing.
when I'm
is
old, I want to have this
this
energy and
is
eccentricity.
the neon represents
No, listen. You can have this passion and eccentricity at any point in your life as long as you just keep having it.
representation of a
Also, he said the word
Borromean
flavor.
ring.
Very important.
The cool thing about a Borromean, or as some people say, a Borromean ring, is it's a knot that's not a knot. One circle,
Oh, sweet jeez.
another
He said
circle,
He said the
and
phrasing, and I'm
another
like,
circle intersect, and you can't tear them apart from one another. This can't be removed from this.
Channel
can't
5
be
fans
removed
know
from
that
this.
being a weirdo isn't
and yet
age gated. Correct.
They don't even have to touch one another. As an aside, you can prove that you can't make this out of 3 perfect circles that
How?
intersect. These 3 circles, purity, body, and flavor, are interlinked. Under, over, under, over. Under, over, under, over. Of course, the neon is a cheat. Look at this. It goes under, over, 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 under, and on. So it's
He's
a
trying.
projection of the Borromean rings onto the front window of a saloon. They had to do this. The neon sign maker couldn't make a neon sign that had these correct without pretty much standing on their head, partly because making 3 circles that intersect like this, you can show that they can't be planar circles. They have to be at some point or another, each of them has to be slightly out of the plane, which is going to be a challenge for a neon artist.
But you can do that because they're slightly out of the plane.
Yeah, notice how this guy is out of the plane. And this cheat entirely, they should really go under and back over and then down. So, moreover, I'd have to do it electrically with 3 different circuits. Each ring, of course, would need to be a separate electrical device because these aren't electrically connected. They're not physically touching one another. Here, I've got every electron going through this letter E goes through all 3 of these almost circles.
Imagine
and
once
then
Tinker
continues
update
on to
releases,
the
we'll have to
E and beer.
deal with 9
The
dimension. I
key,
know,
of
right?
course, is they want it to look like it's right. And that's good enough to attract people to hang out the bait in front of the bar.
I think that's cleverer.
Neon people are clever. Look what they've done with letters, like the letter A. Euler's topology suggests that the letter A should not be a makeable letter. Happily, people who make neon don't listen to topologists. More than that, they don't keep their entire neon sign in 2 space. They're perfectly happy to use 3 space and project their message onto the 2 space of the window and ultimately onto the 2 space of our retinas. Meanwhile, I got this wonderful gift. Someone gave me a hot glue gun.
Okay.
And I'm playing with this hot glue gun. I realized,
Neon
hey,
liquor signs are completely.
can
I
use
know,
this
right?
To attach,
Manipulators, are they?
to glue magnets onto strings.
Oh.
So that I can make strings that hook up to one another.
'Kay.
Mathematically, this
Who can stop
isn't a
these
knot.
maniacs?
It
I don't
only
know.
becomes a knot when the ends are connected. So a mathematical knot must have continuity. This is called the unknot. It's a circle. The unknot can be wrapped around itself. You know, it's not obvious now that this is an unknot, but it is. An overhand knot, like this is not yet a knot, but it becomes a knot when I connect the ends together. So here's an overhand or a trefoil knot, mathematical trefoil knot. Okay, so I made 3 strings that have magnets on them, and I want to make Borromean rings. Let's go over here,
I understand how
Under
knots
here.
work now.
below here,
That actually,
below here,
Cliff actually
above
helped
here,
me
above
understand what a knot in
Above there,
mathematics
below
is.
there.
This is actually makes sense now.
connect these. Now let's make this one the bottom one. This one goes up there. This one goes up here. And although it's not as beautiful as the neon knot, here's a Baronian ring. Over, under, over, under. This guy's over, under, over, under. This guy's a purple one.
Topology
Over,
is where you
under,
drink coffee
over,
from
under.
a donut and water from
Now
a ball.
what's wonderfully neat
Yeah.
is these are completely linked with one another, but disconnecting any one makes everything fall
What's the
apart.
difference between a coffee
So I'll
cup and a
disconnect
donut?
Just the purple.
There is none.
And the other two,
Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba.
although still tied to one another, fall out. The Borromean rings require each other in order to form these links. If you can find a glue gun, a couple magnets, and a couple pieces of string, you've got it made. There's all the ingredients that you need to explore knot theory. But meanwhile, I'm saying, well, I'm playing with these knots. I can look over at the knots of neon from a beer company.
I love that he
Well,
just has that sign because he thinks it's
I head
neat.
over to the glass shop and I say, oh, I'll make a knot out of neon.
What?
My friend Lucas Clark makes a neon knot, which, as far as I know, they're kind of rare. He makes a neon knot out of
Hold on.
tubing, and as you can see, it's not a true knot.
It's not a knot.
Remember how real knots have to have their ends connected?
Right.
So this looks to some people to be a knot, but in fact it's homeomorphic to a cylinder unless
Yeah.
you're an electron. If you're an electron, you have to travel in an entire circle.
Yeah, he's
Forward,
right.
back the other way. So to an electron, it's a knot. To my eyeball, it's still cool looking.
What happened to your dad?
He died 32 years ago.
What was his name?
Cliff. I'm Cliff Jr. He was a wonderful man. The kind of, my dad, he lived to be around his kids. All he cared about was having fun with his kids.
Aww.
So, okay, Brady. So, I'm 6 years old. My father comes home from the bar where he's worked a long time. And he starts drinking some beer, and I say, "Hey, Dad, can I have some of your beer?" He says, "Nah, when you're older." So I turned 12, 13 years old. We're listening to the radio together, and I turn to my father and say, "Dad, can I have some beer?" He says, "You're only 12. You can't have beer."
Why did he
Dad
ask
turned
this when he was
18,
6?
Went to the draft board. got
Actual
my
question.
Draft registration.
I'm just like, huh?
Came home and said, "Dad, can I have some beer now?" My father says, "No, not right now. I'll tell you when it's okay." Well, I never asked him again.
Kids want to try
In
from
my whole
True.
life, I've never had a drop of alcohol. Never had a beer, wine, vodka, nothing. But I can't see a beer sign. I can't see an advertisement for a wine or a liquor without thinking wonderful thoughts about my father.
Aww.
So it's
nice.
going back in the attic now. My wife and I put it in our front window for a few days, entertained our neighborhood. People started coming up on our porch, banging on the door, saying, "Where's the beer?"
Cute. All right. That was a tangent. That was a good tangent. Anyway, next topic, next video. Oh, that's loud. Is about, well, this is more of a compilation just because 2022, like, we've had a lot of stuff happening this year, right? And we need compilations to remember what the hell is going on. So, here's a video about the biggest hacks of 2022, and and the best part is that this isn't even like super clickbait, and like it's a hacking channel, you know. So this is from Threatwire or /hack5, one of my a channel that I've been watching probably for a very, very long time. But let's get started.
The biggest hacks of 2022 coming up now on Threatwire.
Also, Shannon Morris is like a huge weeb, so like it all matches up together.
This is Threatwire for December 20th, 2022. This is your summary of the threats to our security, privacy, and internet freedom. Today, we are wrapping up the year with the biggest 5 hacks of 2022. Now, these were chosen based not necessarily on data size of a leak, but also on financial or privacy impact as well. So let's go ahead and start with number 5. The DeFi platform Wormhole was attacked way back in February.
Biggest hack Elon Musk. That doesn't count.
$25 million worth of cryptocurrency.
He is a hack, but it's not a hack. There's difference.
Repository.
Gotta get your linguistics down.
Vulnerability update had not yet been applied to production code, but it was uploaded to the GitHub account. Now, since it was not applied, the attacker was able to exploit this vulnerability and forge a valid signature for a transaction on Wormhole, which allowed them to freely mint Ethereum on the Solana blockchain valued at $325 million.
It prints money!
The attack happened on the 2nd.
Yo,
Wormhole
what the hell?
posted about it on Twitter on the same day. They took their network offline for a short outage, saying that it was down for maintenance. Wormhole offered the attacker a $10 million bounty to return the funds. Now, this
Better for
caused
nature
a
than mining,
10%
though.
drop in the value
Supposedly,
of Solana
yeah.
cryptocurrency, and Wormhole added more Ethereum to replace the collateral funds 1-to-1. At the time, this was the second largest DeFi hack ever, and the biggest one to hit in 2022.
Wow.
Now,
okay.
while not the biggest hack in scope, this one
This
did
one's
affect
fucked
highly
actively,
vulnerable
though.
people,
This one's
and
screwed up.
as such, that puts it on my list. The International Committee of the Red Cross announced the data for more than 515,000 people, highly vulnerable people, was compromised in an attack which likely stemmed from state-sponsored attackers. Now,
Boo.
technically, the initial intrusion intrusion began in late 2021, but it was not disclosed or discovered until 2022 when they found further information about the data breach. The attackers actually spent about 70 days with access to the servers before they were discovered.
I always hate it when they have like a listing of the amount of time hackers had to a data set. I'm like, I mean, on one hand, I do know that the reason why they had access to it for 70 days is because they didn't yeet all the stuff from the servers immediately. You know, it just takes slow. They just trickle it in as to not actually get caught. So that's why they have access to it for such a long time without getting caught. But still, it's a lot of information. It sounds like they've just been looking at the hackers do. That's not necessarily true. It's like, Goliath, think about it. Think about a metaphor like this way. Okay, so let's say you personally sneak into like an office building, you know, and as your exploit for getting into the office building, you go into the break room and steal all the bagels there. Someone's gonna notice the fact that all the bagels are gone, and you're gonna get caught and you're gonna get thrown out on like day one, right? But if you have access, you can go in, take a bagel, leave, repeat. You know? And you'll be able to do that for much longer. Anyway.
Now, this breach happened due to a known but unpatched highly critical vulnerability in the single sign-on tool called Zoho.
No. Why? Patch your vulnerabilities. No.
Which was used by the organization. Attackers were able to gain a foothold on their servers, where web shells and exploitation activities happened, allowing them to steal admin creds and exfiltrate data. People affected were in the Restoring Family Links program, which reconnects missing people and children to their families after being separated due to
Dovey,
war
are you
or
talking about
violence.
someone?
Data like names, locations, and more were impacted. Number 3 gets a place on this list because it affected nearly 1 in 3 Australians.
I remember this hack, and I still think they got away with it way too easy, because what the hell?
And put them at risk of major identity theft and financial issues like fraud. In September, Australia's second largest mobile operator, Optus, disclosed the security breach, saying that an attacker might have had access to customer data. That included names, dates of birth, phone numbers, physical and email addresses, driver licenses, and passport numbers. In total, this affected 11 million customers of the telecommunications giant. According to the attacker, they used an unsecured API endpoint to steal the data. They then posted a small sample of the data on a hacking forum, demanding a $1 million USD ransom. Now, Optus did not reply to that ransom. About 10,000 customers had their data leaked on the forum for free, which led to many customers getting phishing and ransom messages sent to them. The Australian Federal Police launched an operation to identify the malicious actor, and shortly after, a user on the forum, who probably was the one that leaked it, stated that they would not be selling any of the data due to the law enforcement activity and a target on their back.
Oops,
but
the
even
cops
with
got
this
me.
change, Optus still had nearly 2.1 million customers affected in the leak, with each of those people having at least one form of identification number exposed. Another 7.7 million customers had no valid or current ID numbers exposed, but the leak did include email addresses, phone numbers, and dates of birth.
That's like enough to do fraud,
which
is yikes.
Unified School District, the second largest school district in the USA, who suffered a ransomware attack earlier this year in the fall. The Russian-speaking Vice Society hacking group claimed responsibility, and they hit the LAUSD email, computer systems, and apps with an attack. The group demanded a ransom, but district officials refused to pay it, saying the fund should go to students and education. Now, when their extortion was ignored, the group published stolen data amounting to over 500 gigs worth, including personally identifiable information like passports, social security numbers and tax forms, contracts and legal documents, financial data, health and COVID testing data, conviction reports, and psychological assessments for students. So in total, this was almost 300,000 files of information. LAUSD has more than 1,000 schools and 600,000 students in the district, so this affected a huge amount of young people and minors. Biggest of shout-outs
Gotta
to
love
Hush
that.
Puppy perk level patrons today and every day.
I absolutely hate that so much. Like, I can imagine, like, the kids have nothing to do with this, right? It's like, it's the system that they were, you know, it's like the system that they're growing up, that they were basically placed in, and it was the admin's responsibility to make sure that stuff was safe. Like, that's a lot of data, and that's a lot of people they screwed over.
For sharing their fur baby photos and for the support. My
Like,
YouTube channel is
leave
youtube.com/Shannon
education
Morse
alone.
for
Like, what's
everything
the
from
point?
tech reviews to security tutorials.
All of them are most likely
If you are
minors. You
traveling
can't
for
do
the
anything with that
holidays,
information.
Make sure to check out my newest video all
Other
about
than
privacy
be an
pro
asshole,
tips
I guess.
when you
Yeah.
travel. And also, don't forget to like and subscribe to Hack 5 as well. Let's go ahead and finish out today's episode with the biggest hack of the year, and this one is the lapsus hacks. Now, I lumped all of these together because they were
Lapsus.
all blamed on the same group, Lapsus. In 2022 alone, this hacking group attacked Microsoft, Cisco, Samsung, Nvidia, Okta, Rockstar Games, purportedly, and Uber. Each
There are people
time
who use the
using
SS as
similar
abuse to commit fraud.
techniques
Oh,
to gain
shit,
access
what?
to systems. So according to Uber, for example, the attackers gained access via a compromised device owned by a contractor who had their corporate account credentials stolen and used. The attackers used repeated attempts to log into the contractor's Uber account, which eventually gave the contractor 2FA code notification fatigue, so they finally just accepted one of the 2FA requests. Even though the impact of this attack was minimal, the malicious actor did not change any code, but they instead just trolled employees on Slack. It was still a major issue. Now, unlike the Uber hack, Microsoft was also hit by the same group, but in their case, Bing Maps, and Cortana data was all stolen and partially uploaded as a torrent file. The group also leaked source code from Samsung and Nvidia.
I was secretly hoping that the Nvidia part of this was like good, but you
Now
know.
in December, Uber again was hacked. And this happened right at time of recording because yes, I am pre-recording this video before I travel for
Maybe
the
I should
holidays.
delete my Uber
Now,
account at
these
this
attacks
point.
prove that MFA is not a silver bullet for security, and MFA fatigue from notification prompt bombing
I'm
is
thinking about
absolutely
it.
a thing used in attacks, especially this year. Offering employees phishing-resistant methods like hardware keys or pass keys for security can be so much more efficient and so much more secure. I wanted to say a huge thank you to all of my Alliance
Good
Patreon
idea,
supporters
Uber is
this
evil.
year,
Yeah.
every year, and to everyone who subscribed and watched the show. Thank you so very much for your support. I will be back after the new year with all the security and privacy news after CES. I'm Shannon Morse. Happy holidays. I will see you
CES.
on the internet.
Oh, I forgot. It's not about the holidays that are the best part. The best part is gonna be, the best part's gonna be CES. Oh, I forgot about that. Hell yeah. I'm excited. Anyway, I'm excited about CES. I'm excited about all the dumb stuff that's gonna come out, and the stuff I'm not going to buy. I want to see Noctua delay their fan again, and me being really sad that I want them. I'm glad I never signed up for Uber. Like for like a lot of the problem with a lot of those things at some point is like I have to figure out if it's like, is this a necessary evil for me, or like can I get away with it? And you know, sometimes I have to choose one or the other, which is unfortunate. All right, we're not gonna be grumpy. We're gonna be watching Tokusatsu video. What is Tokusatsu? You've probably watched it but never realized it. I'm sure I've read some good arguments that overly complex password requirement actually worse the better for security, but it's an easy way to cope upon responsibility. It's on one hand, yes, because if the password is complicated, people will need to remember it, therefore they keep reusing it, and that's not great. But still, it is the responsibility of the people whose data, people still need to, protect their customers' data. That's kind of important regardless. Link to yours. Plus, complicated passwords are often shorter than sentences. Yeah, like there's a lot. I have Bitwarden for password stuff personally, and that at least lets me use unique passwords for literally everything. So I'm trying to move it over to my own personal like self-hosting stuff, but I haven't touched that yet because I haven't been a little bit too busy at work. But anyway. Tokusatsu.
What's up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie, Blurred Without Fear. Welcome back to the channel. This video, I'm going to introduce you to one of my all-time favorite passions that ranks right up there with comic books, wrestling, anime, video games, tabletop games. That's right. One of my top 10, maybe even top 5 all-time favorite things on this, or likely any other Earth. Tokusatsu. But before we get started, it only takes 2 clicks to become one of Earth's mightiest subscribers. Click. What is Tokusatsu? Well, the basic answer is special filming. More of a direct translation from Japanese, but it's really meant to mean any type of film or TV show with a heavy focus on special effects. Sometimes when I'm talking to my I only watch anime friends, I simply say Tokusatsu is live action anime, which isn't much of a stretch, especially when it comes to TV series. They have very awesome openings and intros, just like anime. They tend to focus on story tropes that typically pop up in anime, like the stoic character who doesn't want to be the hero but in the end has to be the hero, or someone who has to, by sheer virtue of the power of friendship, make it through to the end, or sometimes the character that's a super ultra mega super duper badass who happens to be a little quirky, having to save the world. They tend to focus on story tropes that typically pop up in anime. Sometimes
Hot take: Scott Pilgrim is Tokusatsu? The movie is for sure. Doctor Who. Oh no, we're going off the rails. Doctor Who's Tokusatsu. Okay, what? Technically, the BBC remake of Sherlock was a Tokusatsu. Oh man, I'm gonna say Goliath. Do you mind if I take that take and just like post it on Twitter, like without context? I feel like I want to ruin like people's days with it. It seems really fun to do that. Do it. Okay. I'm tweeting it now. I can't resist.
This is all made even more interesting when you consider that anime's original purpose was to accomplish things on screen that were too costly to do in live action. Go figure. Some of you have watched Tokusatsu and not even realized it, with many shows having been adapted here via the usage of stock footage as well as scenes and costumes licensed from the Toei company.
If you don't know what the Power Rangers are.
Sentai Zeranger, the show that was adapted to make Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and since then, Super Sentai has been a go-to for Power Rangers seasons ever since. Or you could look at Metal Heroes Metalder, Spielvan, or Shaider being spliced together to make VR Troopers, or even another Metal Hero series like B-Fighter that was used to make Big Bad Beetleborgs. Some might even remember the Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad, a show that was sourced from another Tokusatsu series of old, Denko Chojin Gridman. The Kamen Rider series has been used as well, with Kamen Rider Black being the source for the adaptation that shall not be named, but I will because it's terrible, and if you forget your history, you'll be doomed to repeat it. Masked Rider. A show so bad that it crossed over with Power Rangers and was never brought back again. Of course.
Why is there a Jawa in the back?
There's also Kamen Rider Dragon Knight, which is by far a superior and much more entertaining adaptation based off Kamen Rider Ryuki, but once again, not very good. You even had the tattooed teenage alien fighters from Beverly Hills. that was oddly enough of an original series that didn't rely on any stock footage at all.
What the
This is what
hell
happens
is
when
this?
America makes tokusatsu from scratch. Even Godzilla. Godzilla was the first tokusatsu effort of the modern age, and that was back in the 1950s. If I've piqued your interest, then where should you start? Well, that's kind of a loaded question. I typically tell people that the easiest places to start are with Super Sentai, Kamen Rider, or Godzilla, mostly because you probably have
Just watch all of Kamen Rider. Particularly, I personally like Kamen Rider W. I haven't watched Geats yet. Don't ask me about Geats.
already been backdoored into it. Godzilla is self-explanatory. If you love kaiju, giant monsters,
I'm sure that will take no time at all.
Fighting for
hey, at least it's easier to get into tokusatsu than it is getting into One Piece. Hey,
fate of the world, or at the very least, the fate of Tokyo.
The wild thing about is that instead of yelling Henshin, they have to yell Kamen Rider, which makes a branded thing. Oh. Why didn't they name it Henshin then? That sounds like an actual cooler thing to say. I mean, Henshin, yes, I know what it means. It's a cooler thing to say Henshin. It should have been a brand in the United States. That would have been so much better than Kamen Rider.
Men in rubber suits fighting in the middle of cardboard cities.
Yo, Ghidorah. Okay.
With special effects on a ham sandwich budget. And if you watch more recent Godzilla movies out of Japan, you'd be surprised at how far the effects have come. They're not perfect.
It's easier to
but
get into
they're
One
great
Piece
for
if you
what they
use baby
are.
powder.
Some of the
No.
movies even have
Mothra!
decent human stories going on, and some even bother to have really compelling social and political commentary about Japan itself. Some of which can even be related to American society today. Want something more prototypical? Look no further than Super Sentai, a series that's been running for 43 seasons, dating all the way back to Himitsu Sentai Go Ranger back in 1975. But
wow.
Ernie, there's over 40 seasons of Super Sentai. How am I supposed to accept this One Piece level challenge? Well, it's easy. Every season is its own standalone story. Think Final Fantasy rules here. This is typical for most tokusatsu series. Since each season is different and has different motifs and vibes, I always say pick the one that speaks to you. Love Mighty Morphin? Watch the original series that started it all. Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger and see a real Green Ranger. Love pirates or characters who are good guys but not necessarily good people? Then Kaizoku Sentai Gokaiger is the place to be. Love ninjas?
The pirate one was
Sentai
so
Kaku
weird.
Ranger. Harry Potter fan? Try Maho Sentai Maja Ranger. Are trains your bag? Then it's Resha Sentai Tokyuger for you. Like police procedurals? Then maybe Tokuso Sentai Deca Ranger will be your thing. Though I'd almost recommend watching the American version Power Rangers SPD. It's the rare time that Saban does a better job than the original. Want something unusual with Ranger versus Ranger action? Then Kaito Sentai Lupin Ranger versus Keisatsu Sentai Pat Ranger. That's probably going to be the one you're going to want to take a look.
Wait, did they just say Lupin Ranger? Holy shit.
Each Sentai's team typically
I didn't know about
has
that one.
5 main characters, but a 6th Sentai always shows up at some point, just like in Mighty Morphin when Tommy showed up as the Green Ranger. Sometimes in cases like Uchu Sentai Kyu Ranger, there may be upwards of 12 Sentais. When it comes to Super Sentai stories, it typically revolves around 5 characters who either happen to discover the power to transform into mighty warriors and try to thwart an invasion or destruction of the world by some random demon or alien or robotic creature.
That's kind of
sometimes these characters are people who were trained to become these warriors. And in some other cases, they are legendary warriors right from the jump. To give you an anime counterpart to something like Super Sentai, you really could look no further than shows like Sailor Moon or Neon Genesis Evangelion. So Super Sentai, though it rarely shies away from dark or more adult subject matter, can come off to more hardcore viewers.
Is that guy Melon?
As being too kid-friendly.
That guy is a melon.
I present you with Kamen Rider, a series that despite only having 29 seasons, began back in 1971
There's the
before
kick.
Super Sentai was even a thing. It's a show in the same vein, but tends to have less characters to keep up with and tends to lean more towards adult storytelling tropes. There's typically
Symphogears
one main
right
a
there.
different character in a different setting
Symphogears
with a
good
different
too.
motif every season,
Watch
just like
Symphogear.
with Super Sentai. And there's usually a secondary and tertiary writer who shows up up at different points of the season to provide backup and extra storytelling. With Kamen Rider, depending on which era you go with, Showa or Heisei, your mileage is going to vary. I'm not big on Showa era Kamen Rider because, well, it's old. Heisei is more modernized and fits my sensibilities. That said, the same rules for Super Sentai apply. You like magic and Harry Potter? Try Kamen Rider Wizard. Love time travel and comedy and something really lighthearted? Kamen Rider Den-O is the place to go. If you're into vampires, try Kamen Rider Kiva. Are you into more slice of lifestyle storytelling? Kamen Rider Fives is a badass series that really does change up the formula of Kamen Rider. Want something more akin to anime set in a high school? Kamen Rider Forze is decent enough.
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
Detective stories? Kamen Rider Double is one of the best out there. Want to watch one of the best tokusatsu of all time?
Cyclo,
Look no further
Joker,
than one of the true goats, Kamen Rider Build. Even people who turn their nose up at tokusatsu walk away satisfied. It's that good. Do you love fruit and goofy looking costumes, but super duper mega dark storytelling that grips you by the feels and never lets go because screw your feelings? Try my all-time favorite Kamen Rider series, Kamen Rider Gaim. I know, it looks silly, just watch it. Trust me, it's not.
Okay,
as
Gaim sounds
lighthearted
familiar.
and
I
silly
feel like I
as
should.
the costumes would have you believe.
This is one of those I feel like I should be watching.
Dark. Speaking of dark, if you have Amazon Prime, they have their own Kamen Rider series called Kamen Rider Amazon. A little on the nose, but it's also on the darker side as well. They eat people in that one. It's more violent than your average Kamen Rider series and tends to skew on more adult themes. That's all I'll say about that one. Kamen Rider, much like Super Sentai, tends to lean very heavily on their...
Wait, Gaims was written by fucking Genner Ubuchi? Oh shit, I need to watch that now. Oh shit. Oh shit. Okay, I didn't know that. Okay, now I gotta watch it now.
Very similar story ideas. If you've ever watched series like The Guyver, whether it's the original OVA or the bio-boosted remake of the Guyver series, that's a little more in line with what you're probably used to seeing. Another series I'd often recommend viewers who think even Kamen Rider is too lighthearted and, geez, you may need therapy, but look towards a series
Garo!
Basically, it's what tokusatsu would look like if it were on Cinemax late at night. No, seriously. It's a tale that got kicked off in 2005 about a Makai Knight, or demon hunter, with a talking ring who must hunt down demons and slay them. Makai Knights are basically Blade if he could henshin into some crazy Dark Souls armor. It's good stuff. There's mega violence, some nudity, a lot of mature themes, and it can get pretty heavy. Also, you'd be pleased to know everyone performing martial arts moves in this series just about are actual trained martial artists. Where shows like Super Sentai and Kamen Rider typically have a main character actor and a different actor who is inside the suit, in Garo that's not the case. Mostly because the fights predominantly take place out of henshin form. The Makai Knights can only be in henshin mode for 99.9 seconds, or else they become consumed by the armor. Also, the armor tends to be CG, so there's that. I'd say start with the original Garo series and work your way forward.
Okay.
Watch the Garo anime at your own peril.
Okay, one thing, I really don't like CG suits like that. I like the more practical suits.
There's even more tokusatsu out there. If you can find it, and you should, there's an amazing Super Sentai parody called Hikonen Sentai Akiba Ranger. It completely deconstructs the entire genre and makes fun of itself
familiar.
in some really clever ways. Tokusatsu Gagaga is another one that does something very similar, maybe even to greater effect. Going back to more space cop and space military themes, I highly recommend the Metal Hero series, a slightly younger cousin to Kamen Rider and Super Sentai shows that started back in 1982. I typically recommend Space Sheriff Sherivan or Space Sheriff Shaider. I especially...
If these guys were on when I was younger, yeah, I would have absolutely fallen in love with this, because these guys just really seem like the robot space type of thing that would have been in mine. Nell told me to tell you to check Kamen Rider 01. I feel like I've been told that multiple times. And I will. Eventually.
recommend the Space Sheriff Gavin movie and its series since, well, it's the original. Another along the same lines is Tomika
Zero-One has the robot?
Rescue Force.
Oh, wow.
Tomika Hero Rescue
Nell didn't tell me Zero-One had robot stuff. Now I have to watch it. Great, thanks.
Fire. A relatively younger series starting back in 2008.
This one really reminds me of VR Troopers. The last one was the basis for VR Troopers.
It's a little more on the low-tech side in regards to special effects, but it's still really entertaining and maintains the future cop/space police motif with more of a bend towards, well, you guessed it, search and rescue. It's also based on a line of toy cars called, well, you guessed it, Tomica. Last and maybe most certainly least is Spider-Man.
Spider-Man!
Just Japanese Spider-Man. It's always good for a laugh. It's not a good series, but really is kind of a novelty in its own right. Where else will you see Spider-Man having a giant mecha and threatening to send people to hell?
Da-da-da-da!
Also something to behold because you have to consider that this is the first series to have a dyed-in-the-wool superhero, as opposed to a costume pilot, ride a giant robot. It was also instrumental in reviving the Sentai series and even influenced it into becoming the Super Sentai series that we know today, which led to the characters being more like traditional superheroes and them all having giant robots from then on. So thank you, Spider-Man. I could go on about this for a while, so I'll end it here. I did this video because I plan to talk about tokusatsu on this channel going forward, not as a focus switch, but just as additional content to run alongside the normal comic book videos I always do. Besides, these guys are superheroes too, right? Anyways, let me know what you think about...
That felt like less of like an educational thing and more just a dope-ass shout-out section, which I'm totally okay with, because, yeah, I like some of those shows. Hold on. You guys want to watch a Spider-Man clip? Shoutouts to Stan Lee. Hell yeah, shoutouts to Stan Lee. Want to just watch a Spider-Man clip before we keep going? I feel like it's important. This one is my favorite. This one is actually my favorite clip. Spider-Man. Just kind of just I like how he's just like, I'm being annoying and just like just open fires on people who openly surrender. I love Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
Hold on, I need the opening. Because there's also the one where he just like smacks things with a wrench, and that was also funny. Sorry, I just need this. I need the dopamine. Spider-Man. Spider-Man.
安らぎ捨ててすべてを捨てて悪を追って空かける Change the apart 君は
誰君の誰
戦い続けるのか命をかけて一筋に無敵の男
Spider-Man. I heard the costume for this. No way.
Hello and welcome to Comic.
Well, okay, well, also, side note, I'm pretty sure they did mention that this version of Spider-Man is going to be in the new Spider-Verse movie, so I honestly cannot wait. I heard the costume for the Met got stolen mid-season, so yeah, they had to use that's messed up. That's messed up. Okay, hold on. Let's see. I'm not gonna watch this one.
Hey, come here.
Because that's messed up. That's messed up that they had to reuse footage though. Yeah. Hold on. Let me find it. Because there was like a teaser of the different like Spider-Verse logos or whatever, and one of them was this version of the logo. And everyone was like, "Oh shit." Yeah, there is. Where's the stupid teaser? There is no teaser. Why? There's like a parody of the logo for it, and everyone was very excited. Where is it? We're not gonna find anything. Anyway, keyboard. Funny keyboard time. So this one is interesting just because it's a person made this keyboard, and it has basically like nothing but magnets in it. It just seemed interesting to me.
Hello and welcome to this review of my RHEC 95, aka the Void keyboard. This was a donation from user Riskable, a 3D printing savant who designed and
this
hand-built
keyboard
this
is
entire
cool.
keyboard and the firmware for it.
I'd be very
Obviously,
scared to make one
a
though.
huge undertaking, especially as it's all new designs as well. The switches, stabilizers, etc., even the clicker are all entirely novel and not based on existing stuff as far as I'm aware. So this was all done right from the ground up. Apart from the PCB and some small parts like the magnets, screws, stab wires, etc., the entire keyboard is 3D printed, so the case, the switches,
Because of him
the
that I
keycaps,
got
the
into Mex, I
accessories,
even have
etc.,
blue ops.
which not only leaves immense
I have
room for
I
customization,
have
as
aqua
you can just
glides
print
and
whatever you want it
jade
to look and feel
navy
like,
blues
but also
in my
makes
keyboard.
it quite cheap. We've been told the whole keyboard costs less than $100 to put together, not counting labor, of course. Plus, you can just take the top off and wash it if you want, or exchange it for a new top. He gave me 2 sets of toppers, ones with somewhat traditional semi-transparent keycaps, and one with flat double-shot ones, which are more transparent. I requested he make this keyboard as RGB as he possibly could to fit the neon theme of the trailer I made for it, and I dare say he came through with flying colors.
It's so bright.
More on that later. You can take the tops off very easily. They're held to the bottom case via magnets, although I guess you can do without them as well, just using some 3D printed pegs or something. This is much more elegant though. They snap into place very securely, and it works a treat.
It
And
did
the case
scare me
holds
that
up
they
pretty much
seemed like
solid
split
3D
keyboards,
printed
but
material.
it doesn't seem
the
like it.
keyboard weighs a surprising 850 grams in total, or for my American friends,
Just look at all my scrimp here. My scrimp is the best scrimp out of Louisiana. Now down the road, got up in that scrimp.
obviously I wouldn't do
Yes.
a drop test or a flex test on this because I don't think that would be very good for the PCB, but the case feels solid enough that I'm not afraid that anything's going to happen to that really. And best part is of course that even if something breaks, you can just print a replacement for pennies.
It was
For
the best thing that
reference,
happened to
everything
MXS.
except the clear keycaps are printed out
The
as
patent
PETG.
expiration was the best thing that
clear
happened to
caps are
cherry
PCTG
switches.
instead, due to that material's higher transparency. The keycaps, especially the flat ones, come off relatively easily if you mistreat them, but I haven't seen them come off during use yet. In any case, these are super smooth and shiny, but in contrast to what I had thought, he didn't polish these, they're smooth like this by default. The other keycaps
Oh,
are
they're
a bit
printed
rougher
on,
because
like,
they're not flat, but it's
glass.
actually a pretty nice texture.
They're-
It's not double
they were
shot
printed
like the
for
flat caps
scale.
are, but that's fine. You can feel the lettering obviously, and I bet they'll gather finger grime in the legends eventually, but you can easily wash it, so I think that wouldn't be much of a problem.
They capitalized
The
grime in
legends
the
are
auto
almost invisible
captions.
when the backlight is off, but become quite visible when it's on, so I left it on generally. Of course, like I said, if you're not a fan of the lighting, you can just make some double-shot keycaps, although that is a bit more labor-intensive, obviously. Naturally, you
Still
can
waiting
print
for
whatever shape, style, color, and even mount you want. He printed all the normal ones in MX mount, but he also included an Alps mount one as an example. Here's some Space Cadet inspired caps he made for it. They look very nice in my opinion. Plus a bunch of extras as well, such as a radioactive sign, a house, a bomb.
Those look
a
very
cap with my name on it,
hard
etc.,
to type on.
There are also some
But it looks
accessories
cool.
that he's printed. There's holes in the case for mounting this stuff.
Oreo
Again,
holder.
You can make up what you want here. He included a phone or tablet holder. I think it's supposed to be used like this, except
Oreo
plugged in here. An Oreo holder for double stuff ones, naturally. A mouse bungee, which is used for guiding your mouse cord, although I haven't used a corded mouse for at least 10 or so years. some flags, although he apparently thought our flag was blue, white, red rather than the other way around. Perhaps he's a farmer sympathizer. And a coaster, which is so elaborate looking that I didn't even recognize it as such.
The coaster just looks like a
Even included
bonus.
some building blocks to build your own thing with. However, again, it's all 3D printed, so you can make whatever you want. You could print the case in the shape of the Temple of Nod if you wanted, and could bear the ergonomic typing shape that would come of it. That sounds awesome, actually, now that I think about it. Maybe you should make that an option. So, if you want to, you can make your keyboard look like this. Reminds me of that Comfort ergonomic keyboard. So,
I look at this. Hold on. What was that? I need to look at that
reminds
again.
me of that Comfort.
How? 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 How do you type on that? It looks like any pose that I'm imagining makes it look like I'm some kind of, like, weird monk doing hand poses before I beat you up. Not so much how as to why. I mean, like, I'm imagining the hand positions that I'm, like, doing, and I'm like, it really just looks like I'm a monk making funky hand signs to focus my chakra before I beat you up. It's only usable by Joestars? Yeah, no, yeah, you're right. This is the only, this is the only Joestar ergonomic keyboard to ever exist. You need to have amazing hands. What the... I need to know more details about this sinful machine. Like, I have, like Alice-style keyboards aren't even this bad.
Ergonomic.
That keyboard is a... Well, no, that keyboard is a stand, has a stand... and is only meant for people who have a stand. Oh, whoopsie. No.
So coming back to the lighting real quick, there's
Aura typing with Jojo.
Incredible luminosity. Now you're not.
Now the problem with Aura typing with Jotaro is that he would poke the keyboard, and that's not proper typing posture.
Normal RGB runs off of the 5 volts that comes from the standard USB cable that you plug into it, right? Well, for this one, that's not remotely enough. It uses additional power. There's a separate plug that you can use with a phone charger, for example. But even that isn't enough to get the full power. You need a power delivery
We all know
charger
Jotaro
and
isn't
cable. Because
Yeah, well,
normal
yeah,
cables
but
and chargers
he
don't
needs to, like,
provide
write stuff
18
down.
watt minimum you need to run this at full beam. Now, I got a 20 watt one, and even with that, I don't seem to be getting the whole enchilada. And remember, I'm filming this with very bright studio lights on, so it's even brighter than it appears. At the highest setting, the light is bright enough that it's pretty blinding. He even included sunglasses for the unboxing. I've been told that at full beam with
I was right, he has a
all
pen and
white lights,
paper
the
for everything.
keyboard
I mean,
gets
who's
to
gonna
a
stop? I
toast
mean,
of
yeah,
42
true.
degrees
I don't know.
Celsius, which means that it doubles as a nice hand warmer.
Oh, that's so...
Parts of the
Why?
keyboard, especially here, heat up even more to about 50 degrees. I haven't been able to get it that hot,
Why?
though. Like I said, I think my power delivery stuff is fake or something. By the way, if you take the top off,
I feel like that would just
brighter than
burn...
the sun.
That would just
He
burn
included a
through the
bunch of
filament.
preset lighting modes, but he's changed them a couple of times at my request. At the moment, he's still working on a UI that allows you to program it yourself. For now, he's just...
I love this part because it took me basically 0.5 seconds to realize that the video playing in the background is Bad Apple. Yeah.
He included a bunch
Watch,
of preset lighting modes, but he's changed them a couple of times at my request. At the moment, he's still working on a UI that allows you to program it yourself. For now, he's just doing it all for me and then sending me the new firmware file. Speaking of which, the way you flush the firmware is absurdly easy. You just press more fun plus B, which opens a window, and then you just drag the file into that, and then it updates itself, and it even closes the window for you. Now, this made me...
Also, bonus to the guy who made this to actually have, like, using an RP2040. That's kind of cool.
Me very angry because all this time I had believed that the ridiculous way programs like QMK did it, so, you know, with external software first of all, and then a bunch of weird menus and buttons and crap that didn't explain itself at all, was necessary, but now I find out that you don't need any of that crap and you can just do it like this if people make their keyboards properly. I tell you, I was fucking fuming. Why don't all flushable keyboards do it like this instead of making us fuck around with all these stupid programs that are so non-intuitive and turn out to be completely unnecessary in the first place?
Honestly, he's right.
Anyway, rant over, you control the preset lighting modes with this rotary encoder at the top, which is also magnet-based as it happens. He spent quite a lot of time on that thing alone. I'm not sure what shape this knob is supposed to be, but you can print whatever the hell you want, of course. I think I originally asked for one in the shape of a massive cock, but he gave me this one instead. Now, during the unboxing,
Triangle.
I realized I should have asked for an obelisk of light-shaped one instead, but hey, maybe that's one for round 2. You control the luminosity with this wheel encoder on the side here. Hold more fun and then wheel this to increase or decrease.
I love
the
how
light levels.
everything here is
I guess
basically
you can reprogram
magnets.
this and the other encoder as well if you want, but I'm finding this setup quite practical. I'm messing around with the lighting a lot on this model.
Let's
as
give it
that
a line
was
in the
more
shape
or
of
less what I
Obelisk
had
the
it
Tormentor.
explicitly built around
True.
after all. I mean,
custom
I'm not one for backing
custom
towards
keycaps, you can get a lot of
if you
things
do
done.
go
You know?
RGB, do it well, I'd say. It took some refinements to get the animations to look smooth, and they're still a work in progress, but overall it's a nice looking board color-wise, I'd say. Occasionally the lighting glitches, you just saw it a few seconds ago, and just now as well. It didn't do that originally, but since one of the last firmware updates, it now flickers from time to time. Again, I think it might be because of a power thing, but I'm not sure. I think the camera also makes it look like there's other things wrong with it, but that's an artifact. It's just those occasional
You're a
flickers.
third-rate gamer with a
The
fourth-rate
north position is
keycaps.
just the standard rainbow
Okay,
wave. Northwest is an explosion mode that also triggers the beeper and the clicker. Oh yeah, it has a beeper.
It has a
and clicker,
beeper.
by the way. West is static white. Southwest is a color radar mode. He's working on making that look more
With the
like an
RP24,
actual
you can just
radar,
read files you
apparently.
drag into it.
South is off, which is useful for when you have to leave it at night, as it doesn't.
I don't remember because specifically I know that the Pico by itself does have like a little button you can press for you know, to go into like the boot ROM and flash it. I don't know if for this keyboard he's using it as a standalone chip or is embedding a Pico into it. Maybe he'll take it apart enough for us to know, but you know.
Power itself down if you shut your computer off. Southeast is another wave mode. East just slowly spells my channel name from YouTube. And Northeast shows the animation of some video clip. I think he told me at some point what this was, but I forgot. I originally thought that changing the lighting modes was what the remote control, yes, the keyboard has a remote control, because of course it does, was for.
Yeah, I'm that
but
for
at
too.
the moment, it just outputs numbers. I wouldn't be surprised if he does that in the future, though. Again, you can, in principle, program what you want with it, of course. Now we come to what's perhaps the real star of the keyboard.
Like, I have a macro pad on me that is powered by an RP2040, and I don't remember the internals of it, but I'm pretty sure it's... Look, it's not like I have the datasheet on hand. The switch for going into the boot ROM is probably, like, you can trigger that by software or something. Because all I know is hardware buttons.
Stuff in and on here, the switches. He calls them void switches, which is why I named the board after it. I'm going to be honest, AHEC95, pronounced as RHEC95, isn't that great of a name in my opinion. I like the void keyboard much better. I've done a teardown video on these switches before where I show how they work in detail. They're a type of Hall effect switch operated entirely by magnets. There's no spring, neither coil nor leaf in these switches at all, making it even more contactless than other contactless switches, if that makes sense. In fact, even the tactility is generated in a contactless manner, which is a mind-boggling notion just of its own. Just consider the implications of that for a second. A contactlessly tactile switch. There's 3 tiny neodymium magnets in each switch, one in the slider, which serves as an actuator as well as an attractor, one in the top of the housing, which is a mediator, and one just below the keycap in a separate holding cup, which is a levitator. It works by alternating between attraction between one pair of magnets and then repulsion between the other. The switch generates a tactile bump by loosening the hold between the attractor and the mediator. When they pull apart, the switch suddenly releases its
I want to make a
magnetic
macro
grip,
pad that
which
can
can be
either talk
felt as a
to the
tactile
computer
bump.
or a
At
home
the same time,
server.
it resets because of the repulsion between the
Well, lucky
levitator
you,
and the mediator,
the
and the attraction
2040
between the
does
attractor and
support, I
mediator.
think,
Quite ingenious.
Python?
Where it goes from ingenious to
Or web server.
inspired is the fact
It
that
supports
these
web servers.
switches,
You can have it
being
send web
3D printed, are
requests.
fully tunable. The switch weight,
If you want, I
length
can
of
send you the
throw, and most
tutorial, because
notably
I don't know
the
much.
magnitude of the tactility can all be modulated by printing the switches in different ways or by using different magnets. For example, here's some normal sized switches. These have a standard 4mm throw, but he also gave me this fluorescent one with a 15mm key press, which just feels ridiculous. I mean, just look at this, as well as a few low profile demos he made. The way you tune the tactility, which is probably the most eye-catching feature, is by varying how much plastic there is between the attractor and the mediator in the steady state. The thicker the plastic in between, the less hold they have on each other at rest, and the gentler the tactile bump. He sent me over a switch tester with different distances between the magnets to show the effect on tactility. At 0.0mm, there is no plastic between the magnets at all, and these have almost certainly the most extreme tactile bump of any keyboard switch I've ever tried. Look at it, it's ridiculous. At 2mm, meanwhile, they're only weakly held together to begin with, and the switch is only faintly tactile. It's almost linear. The two plates he printed for me use different strengths. I asked for a 1.6mm gap, which might be surprising to some of you that are asked for something that sounds not too tactile.
I haven't either.
But it's more tactile than
so
you
I'm not even going to try.
I also do think there is such a thing as too much tactility. I'd rather have my tactility clean than excessive. The other plate he made for me has 1.3mm, which is a bit...
I haven't said this out loud yet, right? I hate tactile switches. They feel so weird. I'm like, if I want something tactile, I'd rather also have like an audio cue to it. So like, give me clicky switches or give me linears, but don't give me tactiles. I will hate them.
It's stronger.
David Zing released a video at something like that before.
It took me a while to get used to, so this is perhaps a bit overkill. You can change the strength of the magnets to tune this parameter as well, of course. I mean, just consider this for a second. You can choose your own tactility, per key even if necessary. This is quite simply a revelation. I ended up really liking this. As I said, it took me some time to get used to this level of tactility, and I think I'd add another 0.1mm if I could, but still, this is already quite excellent. It's very nice to use. Without a buffer spring, the tactile bump is by definition limited to being at the very top of the throw in this design, but it's very clean feeling, and that's the most important thing, I reckon. I mean, I like Alps tactile switches not because they're super tactile, because they're not. I like them because they feel clean and sharp, and not rough and undefined like Cherry does it. These switches are the real deal in terms of tactile feel. They're perhaps the only clean feeling modern tactile switches that I know of.
I mean,
based on rubber.
I used to have
Yeah,
a
stuff like
noise
Zelios
suppressor
and any
instead,
other modern
and honestly,
connect
that's
platforms
probably what I
which is
got
not
away
clean
with.
feeling.
So
It's just a variation on an inherently crappy form of tactility, in my opinion. Of course, one foreseeable problem with these switches is smoothness. Although I don't know much about 3D printing, everything I've seen of additive 3D printed plastic like this isn't smooth, it's rough. There's voids and unevennesses, and that's not good for switch parts. See, when a switch is said to be contactless, it's not truly contactless, of course. It just means that there's no friction between the slider and the contacts. In this case, there aren't any contacts to begin with, and
I would honestly love to see this in SLA. SLA and lubed, I think it would be ridiculous.
there also isn't any
It'd
friction
be like
between
really
the
good.
slider and the spring as well, because it doesn't have one of those either, but it still has friction between the slider and the housing. It'd be very hard to make a switch that doesn't have that, because there'd be nothing to give it stability. It is possible to print things very nice and smooth. The flat keycaps are a prime example of that. Also, in these tall switches, you can see that the flat face of the slider is very smooth, but the rest, which is rounded, is not. I guess having a better printer would be useful in this regard as well. However, while the surfaces aren't as smooth as those keycaps, it's not bad. You do, however, notice a little bit of binding on off-center key presses. It's not huge. In fact, I can really only trigger it on freestanding keys because I can't press the keys.
I can like hear it, but I'm like
sideways enough to trigger it. So it is really pretty minimal, but it is there. I think this might become less of an issue with better printing methods, or you could even lubricate them, I guess. In a way, it's not really a property of the Switch itself.
I don't think it'd be good lubricated if it was SLA, right? Or SLA, not the right word. You know what I mean.
On normal key presses, it's not as smooth as some of those modern contactless linears out there, but it is a lot better than I thought. It's of course quite difficult to make tactile switches smooth to begin with, even though this has contactless tactility, which I'm sure helps. In fact, the whole notion that it's tactile to begin with helps with smoothness.
I want a 3D
as
printer so
tactility generally
bad.
causes you to gloss over any unevennesses, and this board is definitely tactile.
Goliath, do you really?
Difficult to
I have
detect a
one.
lack of smoothness, even
It's
if you
great.
think. This is also why I focus.
But also, it is a hobby that just sucks the money away from my wallet.
Stabilizers are also a novel design. They still use a wire like traditional stabs, but include magnets above the wires. There's a couple of reasons for that. Apparently, this does slightly help with stability, but also it helps to preserve the tactility in stabilized switches. Typically, they lose some of that. Furthermore, it adds a bit of additional weighting, and most of all, it helps a lot with the sound.
Also, God, could you imagine printing this entire thing on like a regular FDM 3D printer? I feel like that would be a kind of a miserable experience. It would be relatively faster than SLA, but oh God.
Eliminates stab rattle. So this is a nice touch actually, and again it's contactless, so it doesn't impose any additional friction. As I mentioned, it also comes with a clicker. It's enabled by default, although you can disable it by just unplugging it from there.
Wait, what?
Even this is a novel thing. It's an external clicker, much like you often see done using solenoids, but instead of that, it's actually a relay which you constantly engage between when you press a key. I think it originally toggled between off and on between key presses, so you get one click per key press, but it would have two different key press sounds. Now it toggles between on and off in the same key press, which means it clicks twice per key press.
I didn't realize that the noises, for the tactility noises, were coming from this clicker and not from the actual keyboard. That sounded really good.
And
that sounds
sound
good.
Is consistent. I must say, I think this is a very ingenious design, and it works well too. Plus, I think it sounds surprisingly satisfying. Just the same, it isn't as well integrated.
It's doable if you have
into
to
the
print at
keyboard.
low
It's
speeds.
just hanging around like this.
Yeah,
The PCB
small
is the
nozzle.
one component other than the magnets and a few other minor parts which are not 3D printed, and it's almost certainly the most complicated and most expensive part of the whole keyboard. Thankfully, he supplied me with an extra one so I can show you around it. This one comes without any of the components, of which there are a fair few, as you can see. Each switch has as many as 7 solder points, and even then the board is hot swappable. The holes in the PCB are mounting points for the bottom part of the case. There's only a few through-board solder points, and most of them are for the sockets and plugs. Complicated as it is thankfully labeled with what everything is, such as the matter translation array, magneto reluctance capacitor, lattice deplanation oscillators, subatomic encabulator, gotta have one of them.
Yeah!
Sonic screwdriver, multiversal compass, etc. I'm surprised he didn't label the LEDs blinken lights.
I was not expecting to hear an encabulator being put into this guy.
Max got funny shit all
Let's
over
go.
too, like do not machine wash dry humor only, and a whole list of nutritional facts. He even signed my name on it. I guess when
Why
you
is there
design
a-
something from the ground up, you can go to town.
Processed in a facility managed by a nut. Oh, this is amazing. Do not hold wrongly. I love whatever the hell this guy's on, making a silk
As if
screen like
everything
this.
said so far wasn't enough, the back of the PCB also reminds one that this is actually an analog keyboard. And yes, it has adjustable actuation. I think he set it to about halfway the travel, which is fine, especially with switches this tactile. But really, you could choose at which point it actuates, and that is a really, really nice feature. I've already done a lot of videos about that. It's held to the bottom case, which is 2 parts by the way, with a bunch of pegs and screws, and although it's not mega secured in there, it's secured enough, I think. It sags a little bit when you pick it up from one end, but considering
I'm a big
the
fan of
backplate is the
encabulators.
PCB itself, I guess that's to be expected. That's also why I didn't want to do a drop test. From what I understand, the cost of custom PCBs ramps up pretty quickly after this size, which is the main reason why he went with a compact form factor. Now, thankfully most of the keys are here, including a delete and a print screen button. I guess he must have noticed from my earlier videos that I use those keys a lot. Plus, of course, there's a set of macro keys above the F keys which you can program stuff into. I think I only asked him for some page up and page down keys, which are otherwise missing from the layout, and those are very useful for things like Tarkov, but that's about it. The layout is pretty complete otherwise anyway. Overall, this is a fantastic keyboard. Just think of how much new ground this thing breaks. It's incredible. I really think that this has the potential to go all the way, even if it's not the copycat crap most people prefer nowadays. Especially considering its legitimacy in the tactile department, this really is something people should keep in mind, I think. And remember, you can choose how tactile you want it, which is just amazing. And if you're not happy, just print some new switches with a different
Revolutionary
tactility
for
and
real,
slot
for real.
them in. They're hot swappable anyway.
Love the
It's
encapsulator.
just so brilliant on so many levels. Anyway, that's it for this review. Thank you for watching.
Oh man, what if I had an encapsulator as like a Twitch emote? It would just be a box with blinking lights on it. I feel like I want that now. Oh, Alma coffee encabulator. Oh, it's such a fun idea. Okay. Anyway, speaking of fun, let's make fun. Not too sure about the 20-watt LED. Yeah, the 20-watt LEDs are, warm. All right, speaking of fun, let's make fun of e-machines for just like a quick second. It's about a iMac knockoff, and from Crazy Ken. I love Crazy Ken's channel. Come on, load. Come on.
Hey, come here.
There it is.
Corporate needs you to find the difference between this picture and this picture. They're
the same picture.
And that's kind of illegal. So let's talk about this. Sponsored by Linode. Hey everyone, how are you all doing? If you're new here, welcome. My name is Crazy Ken, and today we are very blessed to have an E1 computer in the layer. These things are pretty hard to find because the company only made one generation of them, because it got struck with the ban hammer. That's right, Apple sued E-machines over the E1's design. But why exactly? What even is an E1 computer? And what happened during the lawsuit? Those are all excellent questions. So let's take a look at the company behind the E1.
E-Machines.
E-Machines was founded in September 1998 by Lap Shun Wei. The company was backed by two other companies from South Korea, Trigem and Korea Data Systems. E-Machines' goal was to make low-cost PCs, around $500, targeting consumers who don't own a computer yet. And it worked.
Yeah.
E-Machines garnered almost 10% PC market share by March 1999. The company was rising to success, but
I'm not gonna lie, my first computer was also an E-Machines, so
things take a turn.
I can corroborate the
August 5th,
story.
1999, when they released the E1. And this is where we get into a little bit of legal trouble. As you may have noticed, E1 looks very similar to a fruit-flavored computer that's already on the market, the iMac.
Fruit.
I won't go into an elaborate history about what the iMac is, because I already did that in another episode, so take a look. But for now, here's the quick rundown. In the mid-90s, Apple was nearing insolvency, losing money left and right. When Steve Jobs returned to Apple as interim CEO in 1997, he helped create a new product strategy to save the company. The first product introduced with the new strategy was the iMac, featuring an all-new egg-shaped design and frosted blue-green color.
Egg.
Remember, in the 80s and the 90s, you could have a computer in any color you want, as long as it was beige. So this colorful new computer really stood out. The unique design, plus its ease of use and internet readiness, helped it sell 800,000 units from May 1998 to year-end. And if a company sees another company's product succeeding, what are they going to do? They're going to try to replicate that success, right? Look at what happened when TikTok exploded. Pretty much every major social network introduced some sort of short-form video feature. Now, before I nitpick and show you the traits E1 borrowed from iMac, let's take a look at what this computer actually is. The E1 is an all-in-one personal computer, meaning the computer and monitor are combined into one device. It features a 15-inch CRT display at 1024 by 768 resolution and an ATI 3D Rage XL AGP graphics
Yeah.
controller. And all of the monitor settings can be adjusted via software. And I know I'm a grown man, but watching a CRT degauss itself is still infinitely amusing. E1 has 64 megabytes of built-in system memory, but this system is upgraded to 192. On the CPU side, E1 uses an Intel Celeron clocked at 433 megahertz. However, Windows 98 reads it as a Pentium 2, probably because both chips were similar at the time, and this early version of Windows 98 couldn't tell the difference. The BIOS setup, however, does show the correct CPU name. For internal storage, there's a 6.4GB hard disk, and on the front is a floppy drive, a 24x CD-ROM drive, questionable stereo speakers, and some other controls we'll talk about later, plus a USB port, headphone jack, and microphone jack. On the side is an Ethernet port, PS2 ports for mouse and keyboard, a serial port, another USB port, audio out, RJ11 phone and wall connectors with a built-in 56K modem, and 2 PCM CIA slots, which we will test.
Expansion.
On the back, there's a parallel port, namely for printers, and a 15-pin MIDI/game controller port, and an interesting thing about the Ethernet port, it shows a red light when disconnected, as opposed to no light. On the software side, E1 ships with Windows 98 First Edition and Microsoft Works, and the whole thing can be yours for $799 US before rebates. So we have these two similar looking products. Now let's take a look at what the E1 borrowed from the iMac. In my opinion, the most glaring copycat move is the color. If we examine it closely, we can see the iMac's Bondi blue color is technically more green than the E1's deep blue color. But from a distance, especially at a quick glance, the color is nearly identical. The frosted texture and translucent appearance are also extremely similar to iMac. The E1
I honestly just kind of wish that everybody like jumped on board with this aesthetic because it was really good. Like when I think about like my early 2000s age as a witch, like I imagine this. Also, not gonna lie, my hat is also kind of inspired by semi-transparent stuff because I miss the 80s.
shape also resembles the iMac, though it is a little bit different.
Yeah, translucent
But both
consoles are
designs
the
curvy
good.
and teardrop shaped. Even the E1's power button and eject button are nearly identical to the iMac. E-machines even put a handle on top, just like Apple. However, it looks different.
Like I modded my translucent stuff's so good, man. I was like I modded my Switch to be translucent and the Joy-Cons to be translucent. I got a shelf for my soldering iron, which also makes it now see-through. It's real good.
Enough, so I don't think that's too bad of a copy. The keyboard, though, looks really similar to the iMac. Even down to the semi-transparent black keycaps. They even mimicked Apple's signature pinstripes on the bottom. Probably not a good idea if you want to avoid a lawsuit, in my opinion. And while iMac's keyboard is white on top and blue on bottom, E1's keyboard is blue on top and white on bottom. No one will ever know. Unfortunately, I couldn't get my hands on the original
legally
E1
distinct
mouse. They seem to be rather elusive. The mouse's design was very different from Apple's controversial Puck mouse, so maybe it's a good thing they didn't copy that. Plus, it has a scroll wheel, so that's another nice feature the Apple mouse doesn't have. So, what are we gonna do? Well, Clint recommended this Kensington USB mouse in a box, which has a similar color scheme to the iMac, and I think it pairs well with this, and I was lucky enough to find one still in the shrink wrap. So, there's lots of copy-pasting going on. Heck, even small details like the feet on the bottom of the computer are nearly identical to the iMac. E1 also has a folding stand on the bottom. Oh, and remember how the iMac has a door to cover the I.O.? Well, guess what? The E1 has a door as well. But hey, it's not the same. It slides instead of swinging. Completely different. Okay, so I've been
legally
giving
distinct.
a fair share of criticism, so let's shake up the mood a little bit. Credit to where it's due, the E1 has some features the iMac doesn't. For example, it has a floppy disk drive, unlike...
I would like to interrupt everybody's important Finding Out Friday for a more important announcement. Look at him. He. They. He. I want he so bad. You guys don't understand. I love this thing so much, and I want to buy it. It's $40. Like, listen, okay, hold on. Just tangent, because it just keeps reminding me this. He. Look at him. I want him. No, actually, no. I want the Bondi Blue. I want him. And I want the iPod. Look at him. Look at his little silly, like, 3-pixel face. He's adorable. Also, apparently the click wheel also works, and I want it. Okay, if anyone has wants to give me a late birthday present, I'm just saying. I for some reason haven't pulled the trigger on purchasing both of these, and I'm really close to doing it anyway. So, you know.
The iMac. Yes, Apple was trying to move away from older technologies, but there
No, the capture stopped working. No. Oh, hold on.
were still plenty of people in the late 90s who liked the convenience of floppy disks.
No!
Now, an interesting thing is, when Apple was working on the
capture stopped working. No. There we go.
iMac, they may have been developing a version internally that had a floppy disk drive built in. In fact, I have a rare prototype iMac G3, and it has a floppy disk drive connector on the motherboard with a cable plugged in.
Also, dear God, that battery looks like it's just ready to explode.
To it. So it shows you they were testing something at one time internally. What it was exactly, I can't say for sure. E1 also has dual PCM CIA expansion slots. Unlike iMac, and thanks to Brainiac Brent's spare parts and his know-how, this E1 can now connect to Wi-Fi. The system also has media controls on the front, play, pause, volume, etc., and a little status LCD. And here's a neat feature. The CD player can actually play music even if the computer is shut down. And another thing I didn't expect, this thing has built-in RCA capture. Yes, feel free to bust out an old game console and hook it up to your E1. You can use it as a display,
TV.
and you can even record video and capture sound. Pretty neat. E1 also features double the iMac's RAM, 64 megabytes instead of 32, and the hard disk capacity is 6.4 compared to 4. And the CPU is clocked at 433 megahertz compared to 233, but keep in mind, one is a Celeron and one is a PowerPC. They're kind of not a fair comparison. And overall, these specs sound better on paper, but how that translates into real life can vary. But the biggest difference was the price. E1 sold for $799, and a mere $399 if you sign up for 3 years of CompuServe. The iMac, on the other hand, sold for $1299. And yes, a lower price can be appealing, especially to first-time computer buyers. And this was eMachine's mission, keep the computers low cost.
The price, I can't even afford one of those now, let alone then.
The overall build
oh my
quality
God.
feels cheaper than Apple's. It's kind of hard to describe, but it doesn't feel as solid. And the handle on top has a sharp edge, so it's not comfortable to hold. And I'm afraid if I lift the computer with the handle, something is gonna break. It doesn't look or feel that sturdy, and Clint can attest to this.
It's
also,
broken.
this system feels really slow at times. I've been waiting 2 minutes for it to boot up, and I'm still on the Windows 98 screen. Still loading.
Dong.
Still loading! Martha! That took 3 minutes and 50 seconds to boot up, whereas the iMac, which is even older than the E1, took only 1 minute and 43 seconds. I know that's not a super scientific comparison, but consumers aren't going to be doing super scientific comparisons for speed between products anyway. I'm just showing you what I'm noticing. For what it's worth, I did defrag the hard disk, I disabled startup programs, and overall it just feels really slow, particularly with the boot up. But it is using an Intel Celeron, and those don't have the greatest reputation for speed, pretty much by design. They're built for lower end systems. And
They never were
performance
fast, were
issues,
they?
the RCA capture can be a little bit spotty. The quality looks decent and the frame rate is smooth, but when recording is enabled, frame rate drops significantly. When playing back the videos, the E1 may also drop frames, depending on the recording's quality.
It's tiny.
But my biggest beef with the system, in terms of corner cutting...
Wait, hold on. He showed the recording. He showed the recording options. Oh my God. .240 by 176 at 15 frames per second. I'm pretty sure like our Twitter avatars take up more space. Maybe like twice. And oh God.
Recording's quality settings. But my biggest beef with the system, in terms of corner cutting, is the cheap sound system. It's driven by a Crystal CS4280 card, but the speakers, they just sound like crap. There's very little dynamic range, and everything just sounds kind of fuzzy and tinny. And it's not just the speakers. I tried listening to music with headphones via the headphone jack and the audio out jack, and there's a lot of
I thought it was for cameras.
Both jacks squeal.
Or just like video input.
You can also notice squealing if you put your ears really close to the speakers. It's not as bad as the headphone jack, though. However, when the computer is shut down and you're just using the solo CD player feature, the music sounds fine.
When the audio is bad,
it
makes my ears bleed.
But when you turn the computer back on, that's when the noise comes back. So this issue is likely due to interference. There's a lot of electronic components packed together in a tight space with inadequate shielding. The iMac, on the other hand, sounds perfectly fine. There's definitely some corner cutting going on, but that's what you get when you cheap out most of the time. But for some people, that's totally okay. But what's not okay is copying other people's designs. Where do you draw the line between borrowing someone's work and copying someone's work and just using someone else's work as inspiration? It's a gray area, and that's why we have courts. And Apple absolutely took advantage of this. So what happened with this lawsuit? And why and how did the E1 get
Hell yeah, the court
system. It
system.
didn't take long for Apple to catch wind of the new blue competitor in the PC world. 2 weeks after E1 launched, Apple filed a lawsuit against eMachines. Steve Jobs, Apple's interim CEO at the time, said there is an unlimited number of original designs that eMachines could have created for their computers, but instead, they chose to copy Apple's designs.
Like, they could have made a cow one. People like girls in anime. People like girls in cowgirl outfits, like cowgirl bikinis. Why didn't eMachines take advantage of this fact and make a computer with a cow print on it? Honestly, I think eMachines would have lived if they took my suggestion. That's all I'm saying. Because Gateway did do that. Oh shoot, they took all the good stuff. No.
At the same time, Stephen Ducker, eMachines CEO, said the E1 was not an iMac knockoff, saying they are not alike.
Okay.
Really? You know, something funny happened recently. I was on a FaceTime call with my mom, and I showed her the E1, and instinctively she thought it was an Apple product. Just throwing that out there. But in the eyes of the law, what exactly are these companies fighting over? It's called trade dress. Trade dress is part of trademark law. Trade dress refers to the design of a product, for example, the product shape or configuration. It also refers to the color of the product and the packaging of the product. And the purpose of trade dress protection is to protect consumers from accidentally buying imitative products. And in the iMac case, we can reasonably assume Apple wanted their computer to continue selling successfully, instead of some potential sales accidentally winding up in eMachines' pockets because a consumer was confused about what computer to buy.
I didn't even know that this was how this worked.
System. So what ruling does Apple deserve? Sure, the E1 looks similar to the iMac, but there's still plenty of differences. And Apple isn't immune to lawsuits. But fate was on their side. And on March 8th, 2000, Apple won the case and secured a worldwide injunction against eMachines. That's a fancy word meaning Judge Judy said so. By law, eMachines was no longer allowed to sell, distribute, manufacture, or promote the E1. However, Apple was okay with the E1 being redesigned and sold in the future. There's some news articles that hint at eMachines' intentions to release a redesigned E1, but I can't find any photos of this alleged redesign, so I'm not sure it ever went to market. There was kind of a redesign released in 2007, but we'll get to that soon. It's also worth noting that Apple secured an injunction against Teu regarding Future Power's ePower computer, which looked even more like an iMac than the E1 did. Wow. So what happened after the lawsuit? Shortly after the lawsuit wrapped up, eMachines went public with a $180 million IPO. However, because eMachines sold their PCs for very low prices, the profit margins were thin, around 4%. The company was losing money, and eventually they were delisted from the stock exchange. But remember the original founder of eMachines, Lapshan Wei? He bought back the company for a $161 million deal and made it private again. And eMachines survived long enough for Gateway to acquire them in March 2004 with $234 million in cash and stock. And in September 2007, Gateway introduced, drum roll please, the Gateway 1, a new all-in-one computer which, hey,
Oh, it looks like an eye. Oh.
Also had the word 1 in the name. Interesting. And in October 2007, Gateway was officially acquired by Acer.
Oh, that video, that picture. Oh, the computer gave me psychic damage. Oh.
Gateway introduced.
It looks like an iPod where you took its touchscreen. Twitch isn't letting me clip the Hugh segment out of Upsetty. I'll clip it. Or, well, if you can go back and clip it, that'd be also cool. But also, look at this! It had Windows Media Center on it! It looks like an iPod got decapitated and they took its head. It looks so... It also looks like the terrible the terrible Millennium Edition Mac that everybody didn't like, except it didn't have a CD player. Like, oh, it looks so. It looks like a stock image of someone was told to make a computer. Oh, it's just a square.
A new all-in-one computer, which, hey, also had the word 1 in the name. Interesting. And in October 2007, Gateway was officially acquired by Acer in a $710 million.
Bye.
And the eMachines brand survived until Acer discontinued it in January 2013.
Wait, it only died 7 years ago?
I think eMachines had a good run. They helped expand the PC market, and I applaud them for that. Just don't copy Apple. They have a lot of money and a lot of lawyers. You know, we were talking about company acquisitions earlier, and another company that was recently acquired is Linode. They were bought by Akamai. And if you have an application or website that needs to be scaled and deployed, Linode has the infrastructure and the 24/7 support you need.
Final sponsor.
Apps for game servers like TF2, CSGO, and even Minecraft. You can run your own virtual private network with OpenVPN, build an online application with Joomla's content management system, or build a video streaming site with a multitude of app choices. There's so much you can do with Linode's affordable Linux virtual machines. And to boot, they offer award-winning 24/7 technical support. To put it simply, if it runs on Linux,
if it runs on Linode.
Visit linode.com/computerclan and click one of the sign-up buttons.
Listen, VPNs are...
You a 60-day $100 credit just for watching this episode. And when you do that, you're also supporting the Computer Clan.
VPNs are good
I think
for certain reasons, but not the ones that people advertise them for.
But it's never quite as good as the original. It's okay to be inspired by others, but don't be afraid to be original. And hey, you might just create the next big product. Catch the crazy and pass it on.
Like, yo. Okay. Alright, we're actually nearing the end of our time here, so I think we got how many videos? Okay, I'm only gonna do one of them, and I'm gonna end you guys on a bit of a mystery, okay? Mystery. Alright, so this one is... They thought it was hail. It was something way weirder. From Joe Scott.
CIA operative Todd Delmonico drove his '53 Buick to meet Keith Kincaid. It had rained that day, but was it normal rain, or was it chubby rain? Dun, dun, dun. If you get that reference, awesome. If you don't, it's from a movie called Bowfinger. It came out in the late 90s. It's one of my favorites. It's got Steve Martin and Eddie Murphy in it. It's kind of about this down-and-out movie director that kind of cheats his way into the industry by kind of following around this huge movie star and shooting things around him in his daily life. So Eddie Murphy plays this movie star who's already kind of on the verge of a breakdown, and all of a sudden this like really weird alien stuff starts happening around him. It's very funny. I honestly think it's one of Eddie Murphy's best roles ever. Like he plays the big movie star Kit Ramsey, but he also plays his brother who's super nerdy and awkward. Anyway, it's a great movie if you haven't seen it. But the movie that they make in the movie is called Chubby Rain, and it's about aliens that invade Earth by falling from the sky in raindrops, making the rain chubby. Chubby rain.
Huh.
Which is a ridiculous premise, obviously. That's what makes it funny, because, you know, nothing like that could ever happen in real life.
Why am I watching this video, then?
Or could...
Yeah, there it is.
In 1994, the small town of Oakville, Washington, population 600, was hit by a rainstorm. Nothing unusual in the Pacific Northwest. It rains there most of the year. Only this rain was different. It looked like hail. People thought it was hail when it first came down, but when they touched it, it was squishy. It was gooey. One might even say blobby. Blobby. Yeah, this was 1994. The Toxic Lady story that I just did a month ago or so, that was also in 1994. 1994 was a weird year. Anyway, one person who experienced this was a police officer named David Lacey. His story,
Yeah, it was like a weird rain,
which was
basically.
actually featured on an episode of Unsolved Mysteries, was that he was, out on patrol the morning of August 7th, and this rain started coming down. But when he ran his wipers, it just kind of smeared it all over the windshield. It didn't clear his windshield. So he pulled over to a gas station on the side of the road and put on some latex gloves to check it out just to be safe. Unfortunately, that extra caution didn't help, because within 24 hours, Officer Lacey would stumble into the emergency room, barely able to breathe. And he wasn't the only one. Worse off was a woman named Dottie Hearn, who actually passed out in her home. She was found on her bathroom floor an hour later by her daughter Sunny and her son Donnie. Donnie, Sunny, I'm sure that never got confusing. So Dottie was admitted to the hospital. Initially, she was diagnosed with Meniere's disease, which is kind of an inner ear condition that can cause dizziness and confusion. But after a few days in the hospital, they decided that actually it was a viral infection. She did recover over time, so did Officer Lacey and the other sick humans. Thankfully, nobody died, but there were a lot of animal deaths that were reported because of this rain. In fact, Dottie had several barn cats that died. Luckily, larger animals seemed to fare better. Dottie had 2 dogs that got sick, but they recovered. Dottie must have been an animal lover, I guess. And sadly, those weren't the only animals that died. This happened over 5 different rains that occurred over 3 weeks in August. Sunny was understandably alarmed by all this. She actually had a background in occupational safety, so she knew some people at the Washington Department of Health, so she gathered up some samples, sent it to them for analyzation. And the DOH found 2 types of bacteria in the sample. One's called Pseudomonas fluorescens, which is a common bacteria that can be harmful to humans, but usually only those with compromised immune systems. And the other was Enterobacter calaceae, which is found all over the place, but it's known to contribute to infections of the lungs, blood, and urinary tract. So there's a fairly common bacteria, nothing too weird, but the blobs themselves, that's a whole other story. So the opinion of the epidemiologist who studied the sample was that it was man-made, which is a pretty bold statement that would require some more testing to be done on the sample to confirm. So did they do more testing on the sample? Well, put your tinfoil hat on, people, because here's where things get even weirder. The sample disappeared.
Boy.
They couldn't find it.
Oh man.
And here come the theories. Theory number 1 is star jelly. Star jelly is kind of a catch-all term for jelly-like substances that are occasionally found on the ground. These days, there's sometimes pollution. Like there was a story that happened up here in Frisco, Texas that involved bunches of purple gloop that looked like whipped cream that came up on a lady's yard. But they were probably just chemicals used to clean batteries that fell off a truck.
There was
a
like
more
a January
ancient
this is
explanation for star jelly is slime molds. Slime molds tend to get frothy and congeal when they multiply. Also, clusters of frog or toad eggs have been called star jelly. Even some types of bird puke. Nature's kind of gross. The problem that you might have already noticed with all this is that none of that stuff falls from the sky. Even birds tend to puke when they're on the ground. But there was a case one time where meat fell from the sky. I think this was in West Virginia. And they found out that it was actually like a flock of vultures that all kind of puked at the same time. So,
what?
I guess it's not totally out of the question. Another theory is that it's jellyfish.
Okay.
Jellyfish are also not known for falling from the sky. But many local residents did report an increase in military air traffic around that time of the blob rain. Turns out there were some bombing exercises going on relatively close by. So the theory is that the US Navy just kind of blasted a bunch of jellyfish out of the ocean, and then those jellyfish bits got up into the clouds and then came down as rain. That would explain what the blobs felt like, I guess, but almost nothing else. They would have had to fly 50 miles and rain down sporadically for 21 days, so. Something that does fall out of the sky sometimes is human waste.
Hate that
One
truth.
Washington ecologist suggested that maybe the blobs were waste from an airplane. Airplanes do sometimes release the contents of their toilets over unpopulated places, but the main piece of evidence that points to that is actually something I didn't mention before. So I mentioned earlier that Sunny had sent some samples to the Washington Department of Health. Well, she also sent some to the hospital where her mom was admitted. And the lab tech claimed to have found a human white blood cell mixed in with the blob. Oh, and in case you're wondering, that sample also disappeared. Now, nobody else found human cells, but the ecologist I mentioned earlier did see evidence of something biological in the gel. Human waste is biological, obviously. The problem with this theory is that everything that goes into a plain septic tank is dyed blue from that antiseptic. I mean, you've seen it, you know what it looks like. And the Oakville blobs are colorless. Plus, we kind of know what septic tank stuff looks and smells like. I feel like that would have been solved pretty quickly. Not to mention, again, this took place over 21 days. So if it was an airplane, what were they serving on that thing?
Yeah.
Another theory is secret military experiments. Yeah, now we're getting into good stuff. As I said before, there were some military exercises that were happening right around the time of the blobs, waging war against jellyfish, apparently. So the rumors are that maybe these jets were, seeding the atmosphere with something. Like whatever the blobs were made of was kind of a microorganism medium designed to hold the bacteria or virus or whatever it was that made so many people sick. This is very tinfoil hatty, but this has actually happened before. In 1950, the US Navy conducted a test over San Francisco called Operation Sea Spray, where they sprayed a couple of different types of bacteria over the city just to see how it would fare in the event of a biological attack. So they conducted a biological attack to see how people would respond to a biological attack.
Why?
Now these were fairly harmless bacteria, that's why they were chosen. There was a rash of
Why?
extremely rare urinary tract infections that happened just after. And similar tests were done in New York, Key West, Panama City, Washington, D.C., and along the Pennsylvania Turnpike. In fact, a lot of this was revealed in a Senate subcommittee hearing in 1977 where the Army admitted to doing open-air tests of biological agents 239 times between 1949 and 1969. So it's not the craziest idea. In fact, Sunny Barcliffe, who I keep quoting for this story, she thinks that's the answer. Not to mention if it's some secret military thing that would explain why the samples went missing. Of course, another explanation for why they went missing was because they just went missing. Things get misplaced all the time. I mean, especially if it goes into my wife's purse. I mean, the people who tested those samples, they probably didn't know that they were sitting on a mystery that would still be debated 30 years later. They probably didn't have a post-it on there saying, mystery sky don't throw away. I mean, the cooler may have needed to be cleaned, or maybe they had a bunch of life-saving medicine they needed room for. Maybe Kevin didn't have anywhere else to put his leftover pork sandwich. Damn it, Kevin. Maybe it was a secret experiment. Maybe it was some gelatin dust from a factory or a farm or something that got swept up into the clouds and soaked up the condensation and gathered some cooties along the way. There could be a totally natural and rational explanation for this. Nature be crazy sometimes.
But what if there isn't?
This hasn't been decisively proven. Will be.
No.
Unless
Whatever.
it happens again. But as always with stories like this, they tend to become more embellished over time to the point that it's kind of hard to determine what's fact from legend, which honestly kind of made writing this video hard because, I mean, most of the details that I could find came from unsolved mysteries. I did try to use info from various places as much as possible. In fact, my writer, Ryan, came across an article in the Seattle Post-Intelligencer that came out earlier that month. This puts an interesting spin on things. This article reported that the National Weather Service took a phone call from a concerned father who complained of, quote, hot metallic particles from the sky that burned holes in his children's trampoline.
What?
I mean, maybe those were the remnants of an alien spaceship that blew up in the upper atmosphere? And then the aliens got into the clouds and came down to the ground in the rain. In the chubby rain. Gotcha, suckers!
Concern.
You know, it really helps to see the movie to get the references. One place you might be more likely to see blobs is in your kitchen, because you suck at cooking. But that's okay, because you don't have to be a professional chef to make restaurant-quality meals with today's...
Fair sponsor transition, honestly. I would rate that like 4 out of 10. 10 would be actually confused me. 2 is not thick water. Oh, hold up. Are we talking about thick water? Thick water is useful. It's just wild, though. Oh no, what? Where are these here? Like thick water is for like medical sort of use, right? For people who have trouble swallowing, I believe. Do I want to see a sausage made out of thick water? Yeah, maybe.
It's the water sausage sequel. YouTube comment suggestions. We're gonna see how thick this thick water really is. I've seen thicker. Down the hatch. That's an awful sensation. I just gotta know if this is gonna blow. That's a Buffalo all the way. Let's sausage.
Oh, this is dangerous. Is it gonna explode? I forgot how this video ends.
Why did I make it so big? Well, clearly I thought this was gonna shrink as much as the last one did, and this one did not. We'll have to eat it with part of it just laying right there.
It looks like he's eating a condom.
It tastes like thick. It tastes like thick organ water. 0 out of 5. Bop, 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 bop.
That was great. That was great to watch. That was cool. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for tuning in for another episode of Finding Out Friday. So this is the last one before Christmas. I just want to say I'm thankful for all you guys. You guys are my personal wonderful gift that I received this year. You guys are fantastic. I love you all. Make sure your guys' holiday is good and nice and happy and filled with people you actually appreciate instead of people you don't. And I hope you get like good presents like money or candy or chocolate. Like chocolate. Or something nice if you don't like chocolate. I don't know. We're going to send you guys over to a friend of mine since I saw that they're up here. We're going to send you guys over to Jenny. Jenny is a OL VTuber. She's very adorable. She's playing a Dwarf Fortress, so if you ever want to see how complicated that game gets, you know, feel free to tune in. Of course, make sure you guys say before you go, have a wonderful rest of the day. No raid message, of course. Just be nice. And Merry Christmas. Bye-bye. Christmas. 走れそりよ風よのに月見ハローパドルパドル
Have to like dig like a dwarf? It would make sense. Look at them getting all that stuff. Hello, Alma. How are you? How was your stream?